might be relevant to some of you, and hopefully we can, I don't know, discuss later on how it can be relevant. So I don't have too much time. I'll be very, very quick and brief because I want to show you a few different stories. First of all, I'll present our general line of thought, and this is what you see in front of you. I like to say that my lab focuses on studying decision-making in the wild. What do I mean by that? So take your favorite animal model, probably a nightjar. In my case, it's a bat. This bat is about to forage, about to fly out to forage. So it's, let's say we're thinking of sunset. And now there are different types of information that this bat has access to, right? It can be its own sensor information, social information, cognitive processes, predispositions, and of course, environmental conditions. Now, the task of the bat's brain is to integrate these different types of information in order to make decisions such as when should I forage? So should I forage at all today? Where should I go to? Should I go to where I was yesterday or somewhere else? How should I forage? Should I forage alone or with a group, within a group? And these are all recurring processes, right? So the bat has to decide this every night, every season, every month, and sometimes even within one night again and again. So as mentioned in the introduction, we develop our own miniature sensors that can be placed on very small animals, including many species of night owls, I think. And the idea is that this sensor is actually an array of many, many sensors. So of course we have GPS, so we can track movement, as you can see. We can track acoustics, which is very important for us. I'll show in a second why. So on the right top here, we see a recording, an acoustic recording. We can record physiology. Here on the bottom right, you see the heart rate of a flying bat. And we can also track acceleration or magneto. We have a magnetometer as well, but in this case, you see this red line is the wing beat. It's the Z acceleration of the animal, and it's a proxy of its wing beat. As I said, sound is one of the most important sensors for us. This is how we started everything. Sound is really useful when studying bats because of their use of echolocation. So most bats will echolocate. They will emit sounds while orienting, while hunting. And what you see here are sound recordings. So this is a spectrogram. We have frequency over time. And each of these red signals is actually a bat echolocation call. Now you see I can also record conspecifics, okay? So I can look at the interactions. By the way, I can also look at social vocalizations, right? So this might be more relevant for night owls. Importantly, I can look at foraging. So what you see down here is an attack. This is a sequence of a bat attacking prey. You can see how the calls become closer to each other in time. Sometimes the prey emits sound, such as in the case of a frog. So I know that the bat is attacking a frog because I can hear the frog on the recording. And in this case, I know the attack was successful because I can hear the chewing sounds right after the attack. So I think I forgot to share sound, so I will not play the wave file, but basically if I played it, you would hear the echolocation, and then eventually you would hear chewing. You would hear echolocation, chewing, right? Because the bat has to sense while it is feeding. So as I said, I want to, if I have time, I want to mention 3 projects. I will only talk about each one briefly that we've been involved with to show you the power of this approach. Well, actually, I do have to share sound, so I'll stop sharing for a second because this video has sound. Sorry, and I'll share with sound. Yeah. So the first thing we were looking at is social behavior. Okay, so many bats are very social. You'll see in this movie. Hopefully, I don't know if you can hear me while I'm talking, but we're looking now at a greater mouse-tail bat. And what you're listening to, that was a kestrel, by the way. And what you're listening to are their social vocalizations, not echolocation, but social vocalizations. And when observing this behavior, we wonder whether the bats are actually foraging together. Okay, so I'm not sure if you heard me while the movie was running, so I'll just repeat it quickly. I said this type of behavior is very common, and and we were running for some bat species, and we were wondering when observing it whether the bats are really searching together or whether, you know, they just roost together and then they fly out together. So do they benefit from social foraging? Now, in order to show you the results briefly, I will take you to another species, a different species on the other side of the world. This was in Israel. And I'm going to take you to Mexico, to the Sea of Cortez. Okay, you can see it here on the map. And the task that the both species, so before we looked at greater mousetail bats, and these are Mexican fish-eating bats, and their task is very similar. And in both cases, these are social bats. We see them roosting in large groups. Okay, why do I say that the tasks are similar? Because these bats forage on fish. The previous bats forage on insects, but in both cases, food is ephemeral, meaning that it's very hard to find. They don't know where they're going to find food, and they have to search very large areas when looking for food. Every night, they have to research again. So what we see here, okay, so the problem is similar, and we've actually shown that the solution is similar. I want to show you this bat because they're slightly more, let's say, unique. Not many bats forage over the ocean as these bats do. So you're looking here at GPS tracks of one individual flying off. This is called Isla Partida. Okay, it's an island in the center of the Sea of Cortez. You can see that she flies. It's a she. She flies quite far at sea. Every night is a different color. So you can see that on the one hand, she's always covering this area in search, but on the other hand, every night she has to begin her search from scratch. She doesn't know where food is going to be. And what we found, and I'm going to show it in a movie, but we quantify it, of course, in the paper, in several papers. What we find is that the bats are constantly moving with other bats around them. So they are searching as part of a group. So what you will see in the movie, you'll see the bats flying off the island and then eventually returning to the island. The full flight is something like 6 hours. So they fly non-stopping for 6 to 8 hours. And on top of the trajectory, you will see two types of colors. You'll see red circles whenever the bat is foraging, whenever it found fish or something. And you'll see white circles whenever the bat is flying with conspecifics. Okay, you see these white circles. This means that they're nearby conspecifics. And so here was a small patch of fish. Here's another patch of fish, and here's another one. But what's more important are these white circles. Okay, notice that the bats are constantly flying with other bats around them. And basically, this is what we found. So this movie kind of summarizes what we found. We also quantify it with a model. I'll show you in a second. But the bottom line is that the bats are using the group probably in order to improve their searching. Okay, by the way, look at their amazing navigation. Somehow they managed to find a way at night over this dark ocean back to the island in an almost direct line. So why does it work? Why does social foraging work for this species? The idea is that food, both species or insects in the previous species, is ephemeral but patchily distributed. So when you find food, there's a lot of food, okay? And whenever a bat finds food, we know, right? How do we know? I showed you this before. Maybe I'll go back quickly. You remember this? When a bat hears this, it knows that another bat around it has found food, okay? And the idea is that the eavesdropping range, and this is what you see here, is much larger than the individual detection range. So as a bat, I can find fish from a few meters, but I can hear that another bat found fish from up to maybe 100 meters, maybe a little bit more. Okay, so altogether, this makes the group foraging very, very efficient. There's a bag of chips here because we call this the bag of chips effect. Imagine that you're sitting in a dark theater, and somebody opens a bag of chips, immediately everybody knows that there is food over there. As I said, we also quantify this using an agent-based model, so mathematically, but not analytically. What you'll see in a second is a simulation. All bats are in the center on an island, and now they're moving according to local rules. So everything they know is to follow the nearby bat. As you can see, they form groups according to this behavior. There is food here. The food is sparse, it's difficult to find. And once a group, in this case, a small group finds it, but once a group finds it, you will see, like right now, that everybody or most of the bats converge onto the food. So this individual now does not know anything about the food. It is just following the individuals in front of it until reaching the food. We also wanted to show that this strategy can be designed artificially using drones. So I'll show you now a very simplistic scenario of the tracking algorithm that we've seen before. What you will see in this short movie, is one of the students in the lab moving around with a speaker. The loudspeaker is emitting ultrasonic signals, and there's a fully autonomous, tiny 20-gram drone tracking it. So following it, listening to the speaker, and adapting its direction to fly towards it. Okay, so what's very important about this is that the drone is fully autonomous, okay? Nobody is driving the drone. I still have a few more minutes, so in the next few minutes, I will tell you a little bit about navigation in bats and how do bats learn to navigate. So I'm moving to fruit bats. Fruit bats can fly very large distances. You can see a fruit bat here that flies 20 and more kilometers. And the question, okay, and it's flying, I should say, it's flying to a tree more than 20 kilometers away from its colony. And the big question is here, how does it learn that there is a tree here? Okay, how does this bat learn to fly this very straight line towards this tree? Okay, so you know each bat knows several trees or many trees. This is just one example. But the question that I'm going to talk about today is how do they learn this? And so the two students, the two very good PhD students, great PhD students, Liel Ten and Aya Goldstein, who ran the project. And we were wondering whether you can see here a pup being carried by its mother. And we were wondering whether this behavior plays a role in learning where to navigate. We study this in a slightly different environment, in an urban environment, because it's easier for us to track bats in this environment, not so far from the lab. And what Aya and Lee did is they placed our GPS tags both on the pups and on the mothers, okay? And I'll briefly describe what we found. So what you see here, so this is what we see during the first 10 weeks of the animals, of the pup's life. So until the third week, the pup is always carried on its mother. But starting at week 4, the mother will fly to a tree that is something like a kilometer away from the colony. It will drop off the pup. Okay, so this is this dashed line. You see the pup in orange being carried by the mother. I'll explain how we know that it's being carried. And it is dropped off on the tree. The mother continues. She flies somewhere else. She forages. She comes back later at night. She picks the pup back and brings it back to the colony. Now, around week 10, we see a shift in the pup's behavior or in the mother's behavior. The mother stops carrying the pup out. She will fly out alone and leave the pup in the cave. And what we see is the pup flies alone to the exact same tree where it was carried to by its mother previously. Okay, so look at the trajectory. It seems like it's following. Now it's flying alone, flying to the same tree where it was left before. And gradually it starts increasing its exploration and learning to navigate through the environment. And what we hypothesize is that the pup learns to navigate to the tree while being carried by its mother. Okay, you can see here a mapping of the trees. So we tracked several dozen pairs of mothers and pups, and you can see the drop of trees all around the colony in distances that range between several hundred meters and until a few kilometers. How do we know that the mother is carrying the pup? We have accelerometers on the mother and on the pup. You can see here the acceleration of the mother and the pup, and you can see how the two are perfectly synchronized. They're in opposite direction because the pup is carried on the mother. So, you know, one is upwards and one is downwards. But we know that in all cases, the mother carries the pup. The pup is never flying behind the mother. So what is the purpose of this type of behavior? We think, although it might not be the only reason for the mothers to carry the pups, but we think that the mothers teach the pups how to navigate to a location where they later on know to find them. Okay, so I'll give you two examples that support this idea. So here's one example where the mother leaves the pup in the cave. She flies out, this is in green, but the pup fails to fly out. She comes back to the cave and the pup is still there. Okay, you can see the hours here. And then on the next night, what she does is she goes back one step backwards. She then carries the pup again to the same tree and flies and carries him back. So she's going one step backward in her behavior. And starting on the next day after that, the pup starts flying out on its own. Here's another example that I like very much. In this case, the mother flew out, as you can see. And the pup also flew out in orange, okay? The pup flew to the same tree where it's a drop of tree, okay? But when the mother comes back around 2 a.m. or 2:30 a.m., the pup is not in the cave. And then what the mother does, she flies out at 3:20, so an hour later more or less, she flies out. Where does she go to? She goes to the same tree where she used to drop off her pup. And indeed, she finds it there and brings it back to the cave at 4:20. So we think that these, we call these trees anchors for navigation. The mothers know that the pups will be around them, and therefore they can assist guiding and assisting the pups, preventing them perhaps from getting lost during their first flights outdoors independently. So I think that I kind of ran out of time, so I will not talk about the third story in which we show that bats also have some kind of long-term memory about the availability of fruit and nectar in their environment. This is a story that we've just submitted recently, so it's very, very new, and we suggest that bats have some kind of a episodic-like memory, if you want, about the availability of resources in their environment. This kind of summarizes it all. If this is the colony, then we suggest that the bats know where the food is. They know something about the temporal state of the food. This is the z-axis. And they also know something about the number of conspecific, the social value of the research. Finally, I have to thank a lot of students and, of course, funding agencies that took part in all of these experiments. And that's it. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer.